Hello and welcome to the Stinking Albatross Podcast. My name is Alissa and I'm here with my co-host Scott Hayward.
Hi, Alyssa. How's it going?
Pretty good. Have a little bit of bedhead going on, but hopefully it's not too noticeable. Again, sleep deprived.
Nothing that we're not used to. Speaking of sleep deprivation, that was on my docket this weekend because Oriana was working. She's a paramedic, for those that don't know. So she was working all weekend. She's back to work full time, and it was me and my daughter. It's the two of us. So
Every night?
Yep, pretty much. Yep. So it was fine. It was fun, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Did you have fun chest feeding?
I am not a chest feeding parent. There's nothing coming out of there except for beer. And that's not good for babies, from what I'm told.
Well, my mom didn't think so, but...
Apparently there's some sort of weird hormonal drug that biological men can take so they can apparently lactate and feed. Yeah, I should look it up for a future podcast.
Like a milk pill?
I guess. I just thought it was milk
I
stout.
need to take that because I can't breastfeed.
Maybe you have something you want to tell us.
Well, this is a perfect transition, I think, to our first topic. Which is a story that went viral in the last couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. You've probably seen the photos, but we're going to talk about it here and what the update is. But for those of you who don't know, photos went viral last week when a teacher at the Oakville Trafalgar High School was seen wearing enormous, and I'm talking enormous, prosthetic breasts under a very tight shirt with like protruding nipples coming out, and then very tight biker shorts and a blonde wig. And to top things off, this teacher is a shop class teacher at the school. So the photo is actually demonstrating how to cut a piece of wood for class. No pun intended. So
you have to laugh at these things. You can't not.
But I mean, part of it is funny, but part of it is truly horrifying on another scale, which we will get to. But True North Center, they reported that according to the website that sells these prosthetic breasts, the largest pair can weigh up to 35 pounds. So these are like heavy duty prosthetics. And it first came out on Twitter, and everybody thought it was a parody. I don't know if you thought it was real, but I definitely had to double check because I was like, it's just one of those things. You know how like CBC headlines and photos always get doctored and then people share them like they're real. And I always have to comment like, guys, this is fake news. Was this fake news? People were commenting that it was. This can't possibly be real. But then the actual students of the class said, no, this is legit for real. And then started posting their own photos and videos of this person. And it became a huge story, but not to the legacy media in Canada, but to every other media outlet across the Canada independent media, as well as across the world. Like it made international headlines. So after it made international headlines, people started protesting. There was quite a big protest out on Friday. There were parents from that school. There were students from that school, but then there were also parents from other schools that came to join in on that protest. Because as they were saying, if this can happen at this school, what's stopping it from happening at my daughter's school down the road or whatever the case may be. And then Stephen Lecce got involved, who's the education minister for the Ford government. And in true Ford government fashion, said that he embraces and the Ford government embraces all different types of people, but there should be a modicum of decorum, of professional decorum in the classroom. And he asked the Ontario Teachers Association to step in and said that if they don't step in, then the Ford government will have to provide guidelines or whatever the case may be. So this is basically where this story is at. But there was quite an interesting article today in the National Post, which kind of dug at a deeper issue. And this goes back to Bill 16, which I think is really important because there are no real guidelines about what gender identity and equality actually mean. So people can interpret it that if you're a male teacher who's wearing giant prosthetic breasts and may have a fetish and tiny tight bike shorts to a classroom in a professional setting where there are underage women and men, then you can't say or do anything like the school board has said they will at this point in time, because you could be breaking the law. So there are no clear guidelines.
Yeah, and there's a variety of layers to this. So like you mentioned, like I'm interested to know, and maybe you know this, Alissa. I don't, admittedly, but the original video that came out with him doing the demonstration in the shop class of how to use the table saw. Did that come from a student? Because I don't understand how else it would come out. So this is tremendously interesting to me. Now we're talking about a publicly funded high school, not part of the publicly funded Catholic system, mind you, in the GTA. Oakville is definitely part of the GTA, maybe more toward the west side. So we're talking more or less the cultural center, at least of English-speaking Canada. And now we're talking about students who are obviously 18 years or younger, who are basically outing this ridiculousness, calling it for what it is, joining parents in the protest. I believe it was on Friday, or last Friday, I guess, when this podcast will be released. Which from the videos and the pictures looked like there were several hundred people there. It wasn't just a small cotter of people. It was rather a large number of people, and like you said, it sounded like there were parents from other schools who are also concerned that this might happen.
But if you read the Toronto Star, it's just 10 people from the PPC.
Yeah.
But that's a side note.
I did read that in the Toronto Star, but at least the Toronto Star somewhat covered it.
Yeah.
Mind you, belatedly. But what's interesting to me is that this seems to be a response from the students and the student body, basically, kind of letting their parents and the wider world know of what was happening in their school. And there was one, I can't remember if it was True North, but there was one media outlet here in Canada that pointed out, actually it was Blog TO, I believe it was Blog TO or Nar City, one of the two.
Yeah, they did cover it.
Yeah, that Oakville Trafalgar High School has a dress code, as most high schools do, and that it specifically states in their dress code that there be no nudity of the genitals or nipples. And so a lot of students are pointing out, the hypocrisy in this. Not that they themselves, as students, want to engage in this type of wear, but if that applies to us, how does that not apply to the teacher? The Halton School Board, at least for the time being, has somewhat defending the teacher in very vague terms. Of course, you mentioned that the response from Minister Lecce and the Ford government is, of course, rather flaccid, as it usually is when it comes to these types of things. But we've had this discussion with Jonathan before on our podcast, and I think this is another manifestation of an example of in this cultural revolution, if you want to term it as that, specifically in Canada and the wider Anglosphere, this is the train stop where a lot of people get off the train. And of course, it makes sense that this would be the logical conclusion of where things are going, the ridiculousness of it. It is interesting that so you said that was in a National Post article where they're referencing Bill C-16.
Yes.
From the previous Liberal government. Yeah. And it's...
Well, the reason why is because the school board sent a letter to the parents of this school, and they said that, let's see here, they said that they respect the rights of students and staff to have equitable treatment without discrimination, and that gender identity and expression are protected grounds under the Ontario Human Rights Code, which goes hand in hand with Bill C-16. And so they're basically citing the law that we have to basically go along with this, and that we support this, and this is equality. And that's kind of the guise that they're covering up, doing any type of ramifications or having any type of ramifications for this behavior. And I mean, we all remember Lindsay Shepherd, who was a TA at Wilfrid Laurier, who was in her fourth year. She showed in a video clip of Dr. Peterson debating pronouns with another person on TV, on TVO. It was like in the mainstream media. And for that, she was then taken into the dean's office. She was reprimanded, and she again was told that her behavior violated Bill C-16 in the Ontario Human Rights Code. So they're using these really far left-leaning, vague interpretations of legislation to basically cover up the weird fetishes that are happening not only in the high schools, but also even from preventing people from speaking about it or even having logical debates about it in the university atmosphere.
It's interesting, Alissa, and this is just coming to mind now. I didn't really prepare for this, but when you mentioned the Bill 16 part, it made me think that, or reminded me, that mutual friends of ours had sent us a note about a week or two ago and that David Lametti, who is the current federal Attorney General Minister of Justice, has sent out a notice that this autumn they're doing consultations on some amendments, mainly to the Criminal Code of Canada, perhaps some other legislation as well, regarding transgendered and homosexual issues. And it's kind of sort of vague, but one of the things that they had mentioned in there was looking at provisions that currently exist within the Criminal Code of Canada to either quite a bit lessen them or eliminate them completely in terms of obscenity laws and public nudity laws and things of this nature. And this would probably play into that with the code of conduct, at least they have for the students from Oakville Trafalgar High School. It's a continuation kind of down the path that we see going, but it is going to come with some resistance. And this is a perfect opportunity for conservatives, both big and small c, to seize this moment to call out the ridiculousness of it. I mean, if you have 16, 17, 18-year-old students in the GTA thinking that this is absolutely ridiculous, what do you think the wider electorate is going to be thinking in the GTA for a whole generation that's ahead of them? It's not to take a man who is obviously dealing with some monumental mental health issues, if you think that's perfectly okay to go to a workplace dressed as that, especially in a public high school. But this is the opportunity for conservatives to step up to defend and to put out there like good, solid, conservative, fundamental principles. And so far we've kind of heard silence, especially from the Ford government. I mean, this is like you kind of have to take federal conservatives out of it at least a little bit. Like, it'd be nice to have some commentary from them, but this is a provincial issue, and with a provincial conservative government that just won a massive second majority, increasing the number of seats and the percentage of the vote, basically silence from them. And I'll add to this, by the way, for people who are not in Ontario, as we're speaking right now, there are municipal elections happening here in the province of Ontario this autumn that includes elections to public school boards. So for Halton School Board, if you live in the Halton region, that'd be like Burlington and Oakville, getting a little bit into Halton Hills, Perth, Georgetown, I believe. Ask your trustee running in your ward, is something that they're going to actually fight against or not? And one thing
it's pretty low bar to ask, but start there.
And one thing that kind of went unnoticed, and it's too bad you weren't able to go, Alyssa. I know that you had your daughter's birthday, but I believe it was either pre-recorded or live video. Pierre Polyev was speaking at the what's it called now? Canada Strong and Free. Yeah.
Formerly the Manning Network.
Right. They have usually an annual Alberta get together in Red Deer, and in his, I don't know if it was 5 or 10 minutes or whatever, but in his video address, he's encouraging conservatives to go and run in municipal politics, particularly for school boards, to stop this wokeness. Now, we might define that a little bit, and it's kind of rich of Pierre Polyev to say that, because when it came to Bill 16, he sat in the House of Commons. He didn't vote yay or nay. He abstained. But nonetheless, I agree with him, and I think it's important either that we are running candidates to, curtail this in public schools, or if you live in these ward districts, ask your trustees or trustee candidates who are running in your ward where they stand on this.
Yes. The Halton District School Board Director, Curtis Ennis, came directly from the Toronto District School Board, which obviously has taken a leadership role in its efforts to push this radical gender ideology on schools. So it's no surprise that the board isn't doing anything and actually defending the actions of this teacher, because this is the type of people that are in power at this time. So it's extra important, especially given what's going on right in front of us in the GTA, to get involved in the municipal elections. And let's just take note that it's September 26th. What episode is this? I'm not sure, like under
in the
20,
teens somewhere.
In the teens.
Yeah.
That we agree with something Pierre Polyev did that was cultural to a certain extent. And not economic.
Yeah, and hats off to him to mention that. I mean, I think it was, I'm not going to call it a throwaway line. I think it was just one line, and I don't think it was a major portion of his video address to the conference in Red Deer. But nonetheless, he's absolutely right, 100% right. And, for a lot of the school board elections that are occurring right now, it's kind of a little bit too late to get in. Like the deadlines have passed to run as a candidate, to put some money together, to put campaign teams together. Then that being said, there are people who are starting to do this. There is an organization called Parents Voice British Columbia, PVBC, out in British Columbia. There are running slates of candidates in the 60 publicly elected school board districts in BC to start basically winning. I don't know what we want to describe it, pro-parental rights majorities on these school boards. It's starting to percolate more and more in Canada, and that's great to see. And I don't know how many times have we said it on this podcast, or I've said it personally, but it's like another bridge too far. Like it is kind of ridiculous. Like you want to have your pride flag in school classrooms and stuff like that. Like a lot of parents, especially in the GTA, aren't going to bat an eye at that. But when their kids are personally like extremely uncomfortable because their shop teacher, which is probably a hazard, mind you, in a wood shop, is having these large prosthetic breasts, double Z or whatever they are, flying around everywhere, you're gonna get pushback, and rightfully so.
And I'll just end off with some of the lines in this National Post article. I can't remember who wrote it, but look it up. It was posted today. Very well written. And he said, when institutions feel as though they need to protect every form of gender expression, they will end up condoning some pretty outlandish behavior. And he pointed to the fact that there are no guardrails, like I mentioned earlier, and also pointed to the fact that CBC Kids News has produced articles claiming that children as young as 2 can change their gender. And again, it was one of those things where I was thinking, like, this can't be right. So he linked to it, and I went to it, and it actually said, children as young as 2 and 3 can change their pronouns. Today is my daughter's 2nd birthday. She says more, and she says like potato, and like she barely says full sentences. And you think that she can change her pronouns? Like she knows what a pronoun is, and she thinks she's a different gender than she is. Like that's pure lunacy. And he ends off saying, gender ideology as it stands in Canada appears to have no limits. It's adding new facets to custody disputes, imposing liabilities on those who fail to validate the next niche identity, and has a chilling effect so cold that we can't rely on school boards to admit that wearing Z-cut prosthetic breasts with protruding nipples in the classroom is inappropriate. So this is where we're at, people. Wake up, get involved, and let's stop this nonsense and stop it from attacking our kids.
And wake up publicly elected Conservatives, like already elected to public office, whether it's provincial or federal.
Wake up Ford government. Come on, people.
And whether you're in Ontario or not, like to think that this type of stuff that isn't happening in a place like New Brunswick or Alberta or anywhere like that, like wake up and start. You don't even need to really fight back. You just need to state the ridiculous. You just need to state the facts, and the electorate will be behind you, as we're seeing live in front of our eyes in Oakville. And if you can win on an issue like this in Oakville, you can win the country.
When we come back, we'll talk about the Trudeau government, Melanie Joly, and the United Nations. So stay with us.
We live in a world that grows through communication.
Every connection comes from a dream to be heard and realized.
To welcome a better future. What are your dreams?
LaRosse Media will help communicate your vision through our professional video production services and marketing strategies.
Start building connections to your future audience. Visit larossemedia.com
and be sure to check out our extended service options.
Dream, produce, market, succeed with LaRosse Media.
Serving Canada from coast to coast to coast.
And we're back. So today, according to Global News, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly urged countries to uphold women's rights and abortion access during today's speech to the United Nations General Assembly as the global gathering draws to a close. Are we shocked about this, Scott? Is it like just mind-blowing that the liberal Canadian would be pushing abortion on other countries? I can't even envision it, really.
Well, it's interesting. So I read the article, and then I actually went to go watch her speech speech, which happened earlier today as we're recording this podcast. And one thing about Melanie Joly is that she is from Quebec. She's from Montreal. English is clearly not her first language. So she gave the speech both in English and French. Her English is far more impeccable than my French will ever be. So like giant, asterisk there. But it made me think, like, as she was delivering her speech, like did her speech writers just think that poorly of her English, which they shouldn't, because all she was doing was basically giving like 2-word sentences, like small L liberal slogans that you hear around the world. She would say things like, the world needs more UN, not less UN. The world needs more this, not less that. And that basically was a speech for like 15 minutes. So I watched
and that's why
that.
I didn't listen.
Yeah. So sorry to all our wonderful investors and financial investors in right now, but yeah, that's 15 minutes that I'm never gonna get back. But it was interesting because she, in one part of her speech, she's talking about how it's so important for the United Nations and the world and the nations of the world to get together, because we are dealing with billions of lives that are existing around the world today, and those that have yet to be born. So I was thinking, like, okay, there's cognitive dissonance at its finest. And the United Nations is an interesting little beast. It was founded in shortly after the Second World War to replace the League of Nations. A little more structure, a little more permanence, to try to avoid another major world war. We'll see what happens with Ukraine. Hopefully it succeeds in that. But one thing that the United Nations is kind of known for is that in 1948, one of the very first things it did was make a universal declaration of human rights. And this is especially in the light of the Second World War, especially what happened in National Socialist Germany and the Third Reich, especially with the concentration and the death camps. And Article 3, I believe, is the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, which is a line that's in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, because one of the main architects of the UN Universal Declaration on Human Rights is a Canadian lawyer. So just the cognitive dissonance to me is mind-blowing, but I don't think it's they probably didn't plan it this way because or this deeply, because I don't take this Trudeau Liberal government to really plan that far ahead. But I also don't think it's super accidental that they had Melanie Joly, who, mind you, is the Foreign Affairs Minister for Canada, go to the United Nations General Assembly to deliver the speech, a day or two after the election, which we'll get to in a little bit, of the new Italian Prime Minister being Giorgia Meloni, who is basically the opposite ideologically from Melanie Joly. She did mention in her speech that Canada's government is concerned about what they view as the backward slide to sexual and reproductive rights for women around the world, which is also interesting to me because the United Nations Women's Organization, you could correct me if I'm wrong, Alissa, because you actually did go to the UN a few times. They have come out with documents in recent years to specifically decry and to condemn sex-selective abortions. So even the United Nations, as pro-abortion of an organization it now is in its various departments, is more pro-life than Melanie Joly.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just backtrack. So I have been to the United Nations. It is an utter and complete joke. I went for the
You're a
status
UN
of women.
plant, Alissa. You're a UN plant.
I went and I brought it was like 12 or 15 other delegates with me from Canada, all in our 20s. And it was the Status of Women Conference or whatever it's called. It's Status of Women something. And so we all divided up and went to the breakout rooms, to the breakout sessions, and to the plenary sessions to listen to the speakers and also ask our own questions. And we would always ask questions when it comes to abortion, specifically sex-selective abortion, because it was a Status of Women conference. And that's all on YouTube, and we can post the links to some of those videos later. But it's so utterly, it's like a different world there. Like, I am not joking when I said that I went into a breakout session and there were just women holding hands in a circle chanting vagina. Like, that's not an exaggeration in any way. Like, they were just so obsessive about abortion and reproductive rights and just really like explicit sexual things that they were pushing. It was nuts. But when you went to so basically what happens is then the different actual appointed delegates from each countries vote on what they want in the UN documents. So, for example, there was a specific line during the assembly that I went to where one of the countries wanted the definition of torture to be that you don't allow abortion in your country. That was considered torture. And so we had to like lobby and talk to the different delegates and urge them to vote against that. It's sort of like a breakout session in a convention or something for a political party. So if the UN has voted in favor of like a sex selective abortion amendment or something, it being against that, it's because of these countries and the work, honestly, of pro-lifers all across the country and all across the world, I mean, who have lobbied at these different conferences and urged their own delegates not to vote in favor of these things or to vote for them. And sometimes they're successful and sometimes they're not, because I think I do remember that the torture thing was voted against and never actually made it into the document.
Yeah, well, the United Nations is interesting because you have a strong contingent of countries from Africa and from amongst the 49 majority Muslim countries, which of course includes some in Africa as well. They're going to be hard against this, and they fight against basically this form of ideological colonialism. So, when the Trudeau government looks at what's happening in Italy, when they look at what's happening in Central and Eastern Europe, when they look at what's happening in Africa, and frankly, when they look south of the border and see what's happening in the United States, especially when it comes to specifically the issue of abortion, that's where, their deep concern comes from. It will be interesting to see here domestically in Canada, in the House of Commons and in the Senate, if the Liberals actually introduce any legislation regarding the, for example, the elimination of charitable tax status for pro-life charities. And does that just include crisis pregnancy centers? Does it include, churches and other religious institutions like mosques, like Sikh gurdwaras, Hindu temples, that are all pro-life, or would certainly be far more pro-life than this Liberal government? Are they going to introduce legislation that codifies the existing legal vacuum in Canada, which is to say that abortions can occur no problem all the way up until 9 months into the birthing process, so as long as you can find a physician that's willing to do it? Because I feel like if they push either of those things, that they've kind of either said they would in the case of the charitable tax status, or kind of skirt around the issue of maybe they would when the Dobbs decision came out in late June, where the Supreme Court of the United States overturned the decision from Roe v. Wade in 1973. I think they're going to get a lot more pushback than they normally would, or they think that they would, and I think they're a little reticent to do so. So it's much easier to send Melanie Joly to the General Assembly of the United Nations to bemoan the fact of what's happening around the world, as opposed to, taking any further drastic measures in Canada, because they basically have their dream situation in Canada as it exists right now for the time being, which of course we're working really hard to make sure that's not the case for all that much longer.
And this is not the first time that, Canadian politicians have pushed this idea of ideological colonization on other countries. Like when Mike Pence came in 2019 to Canada, and him and Justin Trudeau met and they had the press conference, and Trudeau said that he brought up the concern to Mike Pence that Canadians were very concerned about the rolling back of women's rights in the U.S. And then Mike Pence responded that he's very proud to be part of a pro-life administration, and that his concern and the concerns of Americans are politicians who are okay with abortion up until birth and even infanticide. So it's a very passive-aggressive way of being like, you are an extremist loser, which I very much appreciated. And then even more importantly was when Garnet Jennis, the MP in Edmonton, brought up to Chrystia Freeland, he asked her in a committee meeting, does the Trudeau government give organizations funding that promote or do illegal things in countries where they're at? And Chrystia Freeland said no. And then obviously video came out of the fact that they gave $5 million to Marie Stopes International, and the director of Marie Stopes International in South Africa was bragging at a conference about how they do illegal abortions in countries where they're outlawed. So they obviously do illegal activity, and the Trudeau government is funding that illegal activity, despite Chrystia Freeland saying, no, they don't. So this is just both in word and in action of them trying to push these abortion agendas in other countries, especially in other countries that just don't want it.
Yeah, and this is, again, excellent opportunity for big and small C conservatives to stand up and to fight this. First off, we are in a situation here in Canada, as we are in most of the Western world, where I think a lot of people are starting to question, what exactly are our governments spending our taxpayer dollars on, because of the quantitative easing and the purchase of bonds and secondary markets. You have a devaluation of dollars and the decrease in purchasing power, which has led to inflation, or just inflation, as some people are calling it. And so as those ties are made more and more and more, you're creating a situation amongst the electorate where they're going to question the way that taxpayer funds are utilized in this country. And so probably the very first thing that I think a lot of people across Canada would be very open to would be looking at the way that we spend money abroad, especially for the fact that we're spending it abroad and not at home. And I personally am not against, especially the government of Canada, spending money abroad for people that really need it in very dire situations. I'll never really be against that kind of international aid, but I think a lot of people would be questioning, why are we funding illegal abortions in Africa to the tunes of millions, if not tens of millions of dollars over the course of the last number of years, as opposed to maybe not spending that money at all, or maybe, as the Harper government did, help those women through the birthing process so that, their children can be birthed safely. Their children are well fed and well nourished, and we're not extinguishing those African lives. We're helping them flourish, which is also a very, again, cognitive dissonance that exists within the Trudeau Liberal cabinet when it comes to international aid and who we're actually helping or not helping.
Well, lucky for us, the Trudeau government is a joke on the international stage for a variety of reasons, but most recently because of the whole Bohemian Rhapsody incident right before the Queen's funeral. But if you watch clips from British TV, they just absolutely desecrate him. They think that he's such a joke, and this isn't the first time that international media has made fun of him. So luckily for us, if Melanie Joly goes to the UN, I'm sure people are just kind of nodding and smiling and then moving on and not taking them seriously at this point. So I guess that's a positive. Thank you, Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about Giorgia Meloni and the epic election in Italy. So stay with us.
Nature communicates with us in a universal language. The sunrise starts a new day. The sunset marks our accomplishments.
The most beautiful communication is where the speaker and the listener match perfectly and understand the same message.
Your future audience is waiting to hear from you. What message do you need to share?
At LaRosse Media, we fashion beautiful communications through our professional video production services and marketing strategies.
Create your own most beautiful message. Visit larosmedia.com and be sure to check out our extended service options.
Dream, produce, market, succeed with LaRosse Media.
Serving Canada from coast to coast to coast.
And we're back. So the final topic for this podcast is the epic election in Italy, where the first female prime minister was recently elected, Giorgia Meloni. She is 45 years old, a young Christian mother, and she is being labeled and targeted not only by Italian media, but also international media as being far-right, ultra-conservative. People are saying that she was the most right-wing government since World War II. And all of this, despite the fact that she is the first female prime minister, and when that's highlighted in these media outlets, they point to her pro-life stance as being the fact that that women shouldn't be celebrating her. In one of her first speeches, she talked about how she will defend the value of every human being. She will defend God, country, and family. Those things that disgust certain people so much, she'll defend freedom. And then she ended off her speech quoting G.K. Chesterton, which she said, "Fires will be kindled to testify that 2 and 2 make 4. Swords will be drawn to prove that leaves are green in summer." And we've kind of seen this in the very first topic that we're talking about. Like, it's so obvious not to wear gigantic prosthetic breasts to school, yet we're having this debate on whether it should happen. Like, this is very simple stuff. Women are women, men are men. Biology determines that. Like, these things are very simple things, and yet, you know, people are going scorched earth in the opposite direction. So it's very encouraging.
Yeah, it's really too bad that the international press isn't celebrating the victory of the first female prime minister of Italy, which is the third largest economy in Europe, at least in the European Union. Obviously, a country that's steeped in rich history, whether it be with the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire. So, you know, this is a historical moment that this is the first female head of some form of government on the Italian peninsula. But of course, you know, it just shows the hypocrisy of a lot, not all, mind you, but a lot in the leftist media that they want to celebrate the first women or the first, you know, racial minority, the first whatever, for elected politics. So as long as that first person meets their ideological purity test, otherwise they should be, you know, banished and tarred and feathered and whatnot. Some background on Georgia that I was able to do some research on. She was first elected to the to the Chamber of Deputies, so that's their version of the House of Commons in Italy, in 2006, when she was 28 or 29, so relatively young member of that chamber, just like we have some young members of parliament kind of elected around the same time.
Political activist before that, right?
Oh yeah, no, she's been involved in Italian politics ever since her time in high school, going all the way through university. Very, very steeped in Italian politics, especially on right-wing politics. She became the youngest minister cabinet minister in Italian history, I believe, in 2008, under the fourth Berlusconi cabinet. And then she started with a few other people, her political party, which is called Brothers of Italy, which I believe comes from their a stanza in their national anthem. So for a variety of reasons, because they were originally part of, I believe, of Berlusconi's, I think it was called, their party's called the League. I could be wrong on that. But basically, like, Berlusconi's party was kind of right-wing on economics and silent on, like, social issues, and for her and for others, like, they could see some other fundamental problems. Like, it's not enough just to talk about, you know, the economy or taxes or things like that. There are more key fundamental issues that need to be addressed, especially regarding, you know, the nationalism of Italy, and how does that play within the European Union, or, you know, because there is a movement within Italy outside the European Union, as we now see in the United Kingdom. Social issues of what's being taught in schools. What are our laws regarding the protection of life when it comes to abortion and assisted suicide? What is the wider culture doing, and especially in terms of children's entertainment? So they started this party in 2012, and they first contested those elections in 2012. Of course, they got a very small percentage. I think they got less than 2% in a few seats. Then in 2018, they got about 4.5%, and they tripled the number of seats they had in the Chamber of Deputies. And now in 2022, they won the largest number of votes out of any political party, as it looks like. So I think the returns are basically done, and now under their system, they kind of have to dole out the seats. So she is part of a coalition of a few other right-wing parties, which include Berlusconi's party, I believe it's called the League. And so there's an agreement among those political parties that whichever amongst their political parties won the highest number of votes and seats, the leader of that party would then be the prime minister, probably because the cabinet would include people from that kind of right-wing coalition. But pundits are probably not incorrect in saying that, this right-wing coalition will have over 40% of the vote. It looks like they'll have over 50% of the seats in both houses of the parliament, being in the Chamber of Deputies and in the Senate, and that the largest part of this right-wing coalition is going to be this socially conservative Brothers of Italy, led by Giorgia Meloni. And so that is very, very significant. So it probably is going to be the most right-wing government since post-war in 1945 in Italy's history, which, as far as I'm concerned, is not necessarily a bad thing. And so
the way the media portrays it, though, it's like, she's so ancient history and she's so old school that this is a terrible thing. Well, like they say it like an insult.
It's always like elections are always wonderful things, and only threats to democracies, according to many in the left-wing legacy media, when right-wing politicians like Viktor Orban in Hungary or Duda in Poland under the Law and Justice Party, or Republicans in the States, or conservatives in Canada, although when conservatives get elected in Canada, it's usually a much, much more pale version compared to those in... For now, those in continental Europe. And now in this case of Giorgia Meloni, like, I was looking at like some of her policy positions, and I'm trying to figure out like, okay, like where is the fascism? Like where is the authoritarianism? Where is because there's been some dumb things I would say that the Law and Justice Party has passed in Poland. Like now it's within their criminal code to insult the president of Poland. Well, I'm sorry, but the president of Poland is not the king of Poland, who, mind you, was always elected going back to the founding of the Kingdom of Poland. So like that's kind of dumb. There's been a few things said or kind of lack of support, especially when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, that the Viktor Orban government has done or not done in Hungary. But I'm trying to find with Giorgia Meloni, and maybe there is some stuff out there, right? Maybe my research isn't thorough enough, but like she's just talking about we shouldn't have the crazy transgender ideology in schools. We shouldn't kill preborn girls because they're girls. We shouldn't kill off our old. Like these are very basic, fundamental conservative positions. These are not like crazy right-wing positions. These are positions that are held by, huge swaths of the population, including in continental Europe, in some cases more so in continental Europe than it would be in Canada or the United States. So like I don't really understand the threat besides like, oh, well, she ran on this platform and cleaned up and it's actually popular and that's where the threat is. But like, she's even been very, very critical of the Putin government and has come into the full support of the Ukrainian position in defending their territory in Ukraine, while probably not necessarily supporting Zelensky and his party politically, which is basically, more or less my personal position. So like, I don't quite understand how they're going to spin this as some sort of, neo-fascist, authoritarian crackpot.
Oh, they'll find a way.
They'll try, but I think they're going to fail.
Yeah. I hope they fail. And I'm sure they will, because it's, like you said, she seems like a solid. And if you listen to her speak, I mean, I don't speak Italian, but I was getting pumped up and it was subtitles. So that's telling you something. She's quite a talented orator.
There, you can start watching more Italian film.
Oh my God. The only Italian film I've ever seen is Life is Beautiful, and I can't watch it. I cry from the opening credits to the closing credits, but that's for another time.
Yeah, it's a tough one to get through. One thing that's interesting though, Alyssa, is that when we're looking at, like, a lot of people think of, especially here in North America, as Europe as some sort of bastion of socialism and whatnot. And I think that maybe people misconstrue libertarianism with conservatism. And I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit on this, but I think it's a really important distinction. So if you look at her speech, what she's saying is that, you know, those on the left, whether they be, you know, in the media or within large corporations or obviously the other political parties, they want to take away your identity in your family, your identity in your biological sex, your identity in your faith, your identity as an Italian, because they want to reduce you to the most I guess, monocultural person, which is no person at all, which is no identity at all. You just become this faceless number, and you're subject to international financiers and large, big corporatism. And that almost sounds like it could come from a speech from Tommy Douglas in the 1930s from the NDP. And that's a huge distinction between libertarianism and conservatism that we're starting to see. If you have been paying attention, it's been playing out in continental Europe for almost a couple of decades now. It's made its way to the United Kingdom, which is why the Conservative Party in 2019 under Boris Johnson did so well in Northern England. They're traditionally Labour-held seats because they're standing up for the right of the workers and the right and the right of families to make income, families so they can actually afford to buy a home and grow their family, as opposed to, you know, just being part of the system and you know, living to work as opposed to working to live. The things that she's talking about and the things that her party's talking about and other parties in continental Europe, particularly in Central Europe and Eastern Europe, this is the pathway forward, I think, and I believe, for political parties in North America, particularly in Canada, the United States. The future, as far as I can see, is being socially conservative. I'm not going to say economically liberal, but economically, let's say, pro-family. And not sacrificing, you know, pro-family policies so that the state can make more money. Yeah. I see this as the future in Canada, and I don't quite see any political leader in Canada quite grasping that. I would say Jason Kenney was the closest. Obviously, he was super sidetracked, unfortunately, and that's his own fault over the COVID-19 restriction policies. You heard semblances of some of that stuff from Erin O'Toole. You kind of see a little bit of it with Pierre Poilievre, certainly not to the extent that you would have with Leslyn Lewis, but still, like there's all this opportunity in Canada for them to grasp it, and no one's really grasping it yet. And they're having tremendous success with it in continental Europe, which of course is supposed to be a bastion of socialism, which we're seeing it fall by the wayside election after election after election.
Yeah. It's very encouraging, and I really hope it makes its way here to Canada because I mean the primaries are coming up in the United States, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there, and then in the obviously general and presidential elections. So it's just like one country after the other. So come to Canada, Georgia Maloney and co. And on that note, we're going to move on to our final segment, which is another top 10. So this one is our top 10 Disney films. And so my top 10 lists are just animated Disney films, but I believe Scott did like just general Disney films.
It's mostly animated.
And the reason why we're doing this is because, you know, we talk so much about wokeness and about, being politically correct in this podcast to a certain extent that it made us think Disney. So this is just the direction we're going in. People, bear with us. If you hate Disney, feel free to join us next week. But here are our top 10 films. Do you want to go first with number 10?
Well, actually, real quick first, Georgia Maloney, I guess back in 2018, went on this huge tirade because there was some sort of LGBTQ element to Frozen 2. I don't know if that's true or not.
What?
Yeah. Anyway, so she just went on this crazy. Maybe it was in Frozen 2. Maybe it was a different Disney film out there.
There was like a super quick like hot tub scene in Frozen 1 where you're like unsure if it was like two guys. It was like 1 second long, and people were pointing to that. But that's like the only thing that I can think of. I mean, in the Frozen movies.
Jonathan Van Aaron and I have sat in a hot tub together, smoking cigars and drinking. So we could be in
Georgia
Frozen.
Georgia Maloney would hate you.
Yeah, we're not allowed in that party. We're left wing in Italy.
Okay, so there we go. There's our connection. Georgia Maloney hates the LGBTQ agenda in Disney. Hence, we're going to highlight our favorite films. Makes sense.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, shoot us with number 10.
Okay, number 10, Muppet Christmas Carol.
That is a good one.
I love the Muppets.
All
I love
Christmas Carol.
And if I recall, it's a Muppet Christmas Carol is a what do you call it when you have two different shows that come together? A crossover.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good one. That's definitely a classic. You're not gonna like my number 10. I don't think you're gonna like most of my list. I think.
Probably not.
But I just want to preface this by saying most of my list is I thought about what songs I like the most because my 2-year-old loves the Disney songs. So I'm like, which are the ones that are bearable to listen to? So
Right.
my number 10 is Pocahontas.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. Have you ever heard the wolf cry? Yeah, I love that song. It's so good. Colors of the Wind. So yeah, number 10. She also will sit through that, and she won't sit through most. So Pocahontas.
Pocahontas is a good one. Number 9 I have is actually I don't know because this didn't come out as. Yeah, I think I did this wrong. This came out as Pixar, not as Disney. So.
Oh no!
But now they have it Toy Story.
Okay, yeah, that is definitely
Yeah, I did that wrong. We can ignore that. Great film.
You lose the top 10.
Yeah. Okay, what's yours?
Yeah, mine is Encanto. Now, again, I want to preface this by saying I just like the music in Encanto, and I hate sort of the storyline, and I also dislike the message because I've actually listened to podcasts about the new Disney films, and increasingly there are more and more stars that are young kids or young women who defy their parents because their parents are wrong and then end up being the victor in the story. And you see this with a couple of mine in my list, and Encanto is one of those things. Like, she defies her grandparents or her grandma, and she's kind of right, and the authority figures in her family are wrong, and then she ends up saving the family, whatever. So I don't like that message per se. But the music, because I love, despite his extreme lefty views, I love Lin-Manuel Miranda. I love Hamilton. I saw it in Calgary. My husband got me tickets, and he did all the music to this, and it's just super catchy. It's fun. Abby loves it. The We Don't Talk About Bruno song was like, you'll get there, Scott, because Anastasia will love it. But like anyone who has a toddler knows that you don't talk about Bruno, and I'll just leave it at that.
We just canceled Disney for the time being. So
when you come to my house, you can watch it.
She'll love going to visit in Calgary. Number 8 for me was The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
Okay, yeah. Before, like sometimes when Jonathan would call me, and I'd answer the phone because I was stressed or whatever, and I'd always be like, hello. And he always said that I either sounded like Eeyore or Ross from Friends.
Yeah.
But
you kind of look like both.
Oh, thank you. Okay, mine. Was that number 9 or number 8?
8.
Number 8.
Good thing I'm the accountant.
Yes. Again, Moana. It's another it's another Lin-Manuel Miranda one. And it's again like this girl defies her parents. They tell her not to pass
the wave or whatever.
Water.
Yeah.
She does it anyway, saves everybody. So again, like it's one of those things where the parents are bad and they're wrong and the kid knows what's best.
What if the parents are right and she goes past that water point, there's like a giant shark and yeah.
Yeah. But
I want to see that Disney movie. That's the one I would show my kids. Then I would get Disney Plus again.
I love The Rock in that.
That's right.
That he can actually sing. Oh man, a bald, muscular man that can sing. Come to mama. I mean, I'm married, but if I wasn't.
Okay, well, that's out there.
My husband knows.
Can Jason Statham sing or?
I know. If Vin Diesel could sing, like I would be dead right now, just completely on the floor.
It'd be super monotone, eh?
Groot. I am Groot. Yeah.
Number 7, Fox and the Hound.
Oh, classic. You went old school Disney.
Old. Nice. I'm reaching back for a few of these. Yeah.
I can't. Does the Fox and the Hound have songs in it?
More like music than songs. Like there's a couple of songs. It's probably why I like it because there's very few songs.
Yeah.
And it's about hunting.
Oh man, it's hunting season here in Alberta. So my best friend, in Alberta lottery, you have to you pay a ton of money, and if you get picked in this lottery, you have to catch something, or else you can't. Like for moose, for example, you have to catch a moose if you are picked for the lottery, and then you're not eligible for another 7 years. You can pay like all this money for the tags, whatever, and then not get anything. So my best friend was here for my daughter's birthday, and it was her husband's first day of hunting, and he went out by himself because he's like, I have to catch something, so I'll go out every single day until I catch this moose, because he was drawn for the lottery. And day one, he caught like the biggest moose I've ever seen.
Oh, that's great to hear. I wish I was in there to help him process it. I've never processed moose before.
Take loads, like
it's big. They're
huge.
As big as a car. Like they're massive, massive things.
So she was pretty happy about that. So I'll tell you how moose meat tastes like. I'm sure you've tasted it, but I haven't.
I'm not a huge fan, but and I wouldn't go in that lottery. I'd rather go in the elk or caribou lottery, but good on him.
Yeah. Okay, my number 7 is Frozen, much to Georgia Maloney's dismay. I think it's really well done. I liked it from start to finish. I sort of even liked the fact that there wasn't like a generic, princess type of dynamic. It was like a sister thing, which I liked.
Always a
and
feminist.
The music is good. I know. I'm a turf.
Okay. Number 6. Great Mouse Detective.
I don't even know if I've seen that one. It's so old.
So good. Super underrated.
I feel like you and my grandpa would have the same top 10 Disney list, because those movies came out when he was watching.
Great Mouse Detective, I'm pretty sure came out around the time you were born. So
we'll see. I'm gonna check that.
The 80s?
I feel like that was older.
Yeah, we can
I
do
was
fact
not
check.
born in the 80s.
Right, sorry, 70s.
My number 6 is Aladdin.
Okay.
And you know what? I like the old Aladdin, and I really like the Disney remakes. I will even watch The Little Mermaid because I think it should be good as well, despite all the crazy controversy. But
now Matt Walsh hates you.
I know. I think that's stupid. I think the whole whatever. I don't care what color
1986. Great Mouse
Detective.
Detective.
So it's a little bit older than me. Cool.
Okay, where are we on? Number 5?
Yeah.
Do I even have? Oh yeah, Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh yes, good.
Yeah.
Quasimodo.
Victor Hugo novel. I thought they did a phenomenal job, and the music in it in particular. I remember
you like the
watched
music?
Yes, that one actually.
Oh
liked
man,
the music.
is Fantasia on your list? Because if it is,
no, because that's not original score for the most part.
I hate that movie with the passion.
It's designed to get children into classical music, so that makes sense.
Yeah. Get me into pop music and I'm there.
Yeah.
Oh. All right.
Calm down.
My number 5, you're gonna hate it. Mulan. I love Mulan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I even didn't hate the new one, although I will say that I watched it on silent in a plane, so I'm not 100% sure what it was like.
Maybe
but visually it was cool.
Maybe just keep it at that, Yeah. Cherish that memory.
But I love Donny Osmond, and when he was on Dancing with the Stars, it was the best thing ever. He's just like such a good-natured human, Mormon human. Number 4.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Little Mermaid.
We have the same number 4.
Right, I think. Stop everything. Because how many lists have we done so far? 2, 3. This is the
I'm
first.
not sure.
This is the first time. Like we've had stuff on each other's list, but this is the first time we had the same one in the same place.
And this list is like ours are so different.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So why do you have The Little Mermaid at number 4?
I think it's good. I think it's well done. I love the music. I can sing. I know every single word to like that Part of This World song. I've always sang it like in the shower, in the car. I've just belted out.
Look at this fork.
It's a good it's a good story. Yeah. Look at this. It's not look at this fork. Come on.
What is it? Look at this stuff. Isn't it neat?
I just had
What do you say my
flashback.
collection is complete? Oh yeah. I know what you're gonna talk about.
I need to find the video.
I think it's been destroyed.
I can't. What song was it?
Oh, I
Was
don't
it that
know.
song?
So it was the whole score, I'm sure.
So Scott and I were traveling across Canada, and I had turned on some Disney music, as one does, and he started singing it word for word, and it was super hilarious and crazily off key. So I slowly lifted up my phone and recorded him. So it's kind of this like behind the scenes like bad footage of him singing it word for word, and it's the funniest thing you'll ever see. It is so terrible, but you knew like all the pauses and the extra like O's and everything. Like you didn't miss a beat, so it was quite entertaining. I think it might have been that song.
You know, these ones, these Disney films, these animated ones that came out in the 90s, it's called the Disney Vault. And so basically what happened is they did all these storyboards back in the 30s and 40s as part of like the Disney films that were supposed to continue after Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Cinderella and stuff like that. And then Walt Disney died. The company went into like a weird place for like the rest of the 60s, 70s, and then in the 80s. And then the company said, okay, let's go back to these storyboards that have been just sitting in our files for like 40 or 50 years, and let's make them into something. So a lot of the storyboard and some of the scripting and all that type of stuff, I don't know about music, I doubt music, but all that kind of came from the 30s and 40s, which is why it's probably beloved by our generation, because it kind of is a little bit older than the 90s. If you think of all those Disney films, they're not, you know, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Hunchback, all that type of stuff. It's not like a bunch of flash and screaming and stuff like that. Like it does have a bit of a, I don't know, like a quaintness, a classical feel to it. Yeah. So, was that number 3? Speaking of that, Beauty and the Beast.
That is my number 3.
I think this is probably where that ends.
Yes, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That is crazy. This is just like, we should win something. I don't know. The podcast gods. What do we win?
Honor and whatever else is in Mulan.
Do you like the new one? Have you seen it? You don't like it?
No.
It was good.
I think Emma Watson, she was in it, right? That's Belle. Yeah. I think she was well executed her role well. They were fairly they were fairly.
That was great.
Out of all the live action ones that they've done so far, that's probably the one that I dislike the least, because I think they were fairly faithful to the original animated one from the early 90s. So the music is great. It's the same. I forget the name of the someone. It's the same composer for all these films, for most of them. So Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, and stuff like that. But Beauty and the Beast was actually, I believe, a Broadway show or a ballet, one of the two, because it has a bunch of waltzes and stuff like that built into it. It's a good story. It's a classic story, and it's just a good movie.
It is.
Yeah.
Number 2.
This is where I get off the animation train for a little bit. Pirates of the Caribbean.
See, this is where like we would have had similar ones, but I just did animation. But
yeah, that's fair.
I mean, pirates. I was so obsessed with Pirates of the Caribbean. I went through a pirates party and I made my own Johnny Depp piñata, and it was pretty damn good.
Were you the only one at the party?
Yes. I ate all the candy. No, my whole school was there. It was at the academy, so that was only like 50 people, but still, it was fun.
What's your number 2?
My number 2 is Tangled. Okay. Tangled actually won a Grammy, I think, for one of the songs in it.
A Grammy or a
no, one of the songs won a Grammy.
Oh, the song. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So I like the soundtrack, and I think it's a classic story too. And yeah, I even like the old witch mom. Her voice is really good. The songs are good. Have you seen it?
No.
Okay, I think you would enjoy it.
Okay.
Good. Yeah.
I'll make that. For
actually,
next.
You know, Everybody Loves Raymond. You know the brother.
Brad Garrett.
Yeah, Brad Garrett. He sings in it. He's one of the like.
Oh really?
Kind of like thieves, the good guy thieves. And he's good at it, so. Anyway.
Oh, good for him.
Number 1.
I have a couple of honorable mentions, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so these are I just wrote down a whole list, and then I had to eliminate 3 to get to a top 10. Yeah. So these are the 3 that I eliminated. I have Old Yeller.
Sad.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't ruin it for people.
Yeah.
Mary Poppins.
Yes.
And the original from like back in the 60s, 101 Dalmatians.
Okay. Not the Emma, whatever. What's her name? Not the new one.
Yeah, no, not the, no. Number one. My number one Disney film by far, has been for years, probably always will be, is Sleeping Beauty.
Okay. Yep. I don't love those classic ones. Those like really, really old, like Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White. I'm not. Yeah.
Walt Disney said that for Sleeping Beauty, it was his masterpiece. It was the first film ever, I believe, in 70 millimeters opposed to 35. And it wasn't hand drawn, but it was painted. So every single scene was painted, and it took over 10 years for them to paint the entire film, which is only a 90-minute film because it's all hand painted. And in addition to that, I think one of the reasons I always liked it as a kid, because visually it was pleasing to me, but by far was the music, because the music, for the most part, is not original. The music is from Tchaikovsky's ballet Sleeping Beauty, and they incorporate that into the film. So
you know, a freakish amount of Disney trivia. Like, it's weirding me out.
I like my old Disney. I like my old school Disney.
You're gonna hate my number one.
Probably. Is it Frozen 2?
No, it's not that new. The Lion King.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. It's yours.
I love The Lion King. I think all of it is catchy, and I always cry. Like, I cannot watch that scene that will not be named without crying. I don't know. It's just like, I think it's emotional, and I think it's well done.
Are you gonna be okay?
And yeah, I think so. And I just love kind of, you know, the underdog coming back and winning, and Rafiki.
The underline.
Mm-hmm. And I like the new one too. I think it was really good. And yeah, it's always been like my go-to if it's on. So
that was Jeremy Irons did
yes.
Scar. Yeah,
yes,
he
so
did a
good.
great job in voicing that. Yeah, that was excellent casting. Elton John does some music in it.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas, like teen heartthrob.
Right.
You know, with all your Disney trivia, I'm actually quite impressed that have I beat you in Disney trivia, or
No.
we've always come close? So I think one time it was like 1 point.
We were yeah. There's been a few times where we're right there together at the end.
Almost threw the
at the end of
board at
Disney
one
Seen
time.
It.
Yeah.
No, you left early. you went home early. I've never been defeated in Disney Seen It. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I would say that Lion King would be in my top 20 for sure. I don't know if it'd be, obviously it's not in my top 10. I'm not as in love with it as a lot of other people. I have it kind of up there with me, for me, with like Aladdin and a few others like that. But interesting note about Lion King is that was the very first film I ever went to.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. How old?
I was 5, I think.
Oh wow.
And I liked it, but it was never like one of my favorites. I mean, maybe I was just such a contrarian as a child. Like everyone else in the theater loved it.
They liked it.
Yeah, and maybe I found like all the criticisms. It was like, this pales in comparison to Sleeping Beauty for the following reasons.
You wrote your like 4th grade final paper on it or something. You did a
yes,
presentation.
because in grade 4 I was 5 years old.
I don't know. I have no idea how old people are in grades. I'm not at that stage of parenting yet, so.
You just got to add 5. You literally just have to add 5.
Yeah. Alrighty, well, we'd love to know your top 10s, so send us an email. You can talk to us at info@itstartsrightnow.ca. Give us your feedback. If it's hate mail, we'll read it on air. If it's extra funny, if it's positive, we'll also just take heart in it and love you for it. So either way, it's a win-win for us. Make sure that you subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Google Podcasts, Spotify, basically anywhere you listen to podcasts. Make sure you subscribe. We have new episodes every Friday. We can't wait to talk to you next week. Thank you for joining us, and have a good week.
Bye for now.